Welcome to the Pitch It To Me podcast, a show about the subjective past, present, and potential future of Flesh and Blood design. If you're looking for hot takes and fresh ideas, we deliver in 60 minutes or less, or your podcast is free. Today's episode will be about Oldhim, his departure from the format, and his eventual return. On Red Pitch, Joel will discuss Oldhim's relationship with the fundamentals of the game. On Yellow Pitch, Fuzzy will discuss how Oldhim fits in with the overall Metascape. And on Blue Pitch, Clark will introduce some ideas on replacing Oldhim. You can find us across all socials such as TikTok and Instagram at Pitch It To Me Podcast.
Fun fact, everyone, we're recording this episode on the day before Oldhim officially rotates out.
Bye.
And since this is the last day that Oldhim will ever be legal in CC, we wanted to discuss his effect on the game with the perspective of how he could be replaced in the future. And full disclosure, this will probably be more of a pro Oldhim episode. It's a celebration of his life, not a celebration of his passing, right? After all, we do love Oldhim, don't we, Joel?
I do love what he did for my XP modifiers. That's about it. I got a lot of negative feedback from my friends for playing this hero.
I really enjoy playing against him, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't think I was ever like angry at like getting paired up against Oldhim myself. Like I enjoy the challenge.
I just know I won't eat afterwards, like in between rounds, you know?
Yeah.
That's the only thing. But the game itself is fun.
Yeah, Oldhim was one of the first heroes that really drew me into the game. I like the idea of playing a defensive hero. But the Oldhim blitz deck I ended up putting together was just pummel Oldhim. It was just, I'm going to pitch 2 blues, throw a 4-cost crush attack, and then do I have pummel? I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with that, Clark.
That's for you to figure out, not for me to know.
This is our first episode recording in a while. We kind of took a little bit of like a solid month and a half off recording because our host Clark was off in Europe.
Yeah.
Did you have a good time in Europe, Clark?
Europe was incredible. I could walk places. Yo, that was so nice. Walking places was awesome.
What was your favorite part other than the walking?
So like the highlight of my trip was that I got this really great fan experience in Berlin.
Oh, bet.
A company I really like called Six More Vodka invited me out. Well, like I asked if I could come and then they let me come. But I dropped by the office and they're working on a new board game called Clan Wars. I think the Kickstarter is slated for like late August. And they brought me in for like one of the early alpha playtests. It was so much fun. I got to go with another fan. I got to meet the people who have bbeen working on this stuff that I liked. And I essentially just did playtesting for them for 2 days. It was such a wonderful experience.
That sounds so cool.
I love not free. I love early access to stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
It was so cool. And I'm also really looking forward to seeing like what do they change. I think a lot of the core stuff will stay the same, but you know, it's the small little things. It's the wording, it's the specific effect on this card or that card or whatever. It's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time in Europe and got to do something special and unique. I'm also excited to get back to podcasting. And let's start off with our Red Pitch. Joel, talk to us about Oldhim.
I never really played Oldhim until after he got a bunch of bans, like Winter's Wail being banned and Pulse of Eisenloft being gone. But I still had a really good time while I rounded out my competitive grind session for ProQuest season. I just wanted to talk about what I like about Oldhim and what he did for the game and how he embodied all the things that I like about Flesh and Blood. The first thing is I like how he's true to the Guardian playset in the sense that, because typically in Flesh and Blood, the blue pitch cards are usually the weakest, give you the most resources, but weakest in terms of power level or, you know, some other effect. Like if you're creating a resource token, whatever.
If you're playing and you end up actually like playing your blues, it feels like you drew a bad hand, right? This is not quite where you want to be a lot of the time.
Yeah.
At least as a default. Not all the time, but as a default.
Yeah, people put blues in their deck to pitch, not to play.
Right.
Or like they're like a blue block 3. They're like, it's for pitching first, blocking second. Oh, yikes, don't make me play my blues.
Or, you know, if you're playing against Oldhim and you're down to your blues, you're like, I'm probably losing this game.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we talked about it before. The the resource cards that he has, like for instance, Terra Sunder or Macho Grande, are really good resource cards, but towards the end of the game, they're just insanely powerful to finish off a game or get a key piece of disruption off to continue your game plan in fatigue or whatever. There have been a lot of games where I was saved by like a perfect all blue hand with Terra Sunder, and I get their last piece of equipment that they needed to win out the game, or got some key cards out of their hands that they would try to kill me with. Anyways, so that's what I really liked about Oldhim, was that even though the game was going long, you never really seemed to run out of resources. So I really like the way that he embodied a lot of the fundamentals of Flesh and Blood, specifically pitch stacking. That was a skill that I had to learn as I picked up Oldhim. It's not something that I ever experienced prior, because I never played Chain. All my heroes are usually aggressive, so pitch stacking didn't really matter unless it was against a very specific match. So especially when it comes to like pitch stacking, like Command and Conquers with pummels to get a really good late game tempo swing.
It's a classic. Classic Oldhim, stacking them pummels and Command and Conquers.
Yeah.
Last Arsenal I played with you, you hit me with one of those, and I was so upset. You destroyed, I think, I had a Revel just sitting, a Revel in Room Blood. Yeah, Revel.
Not my Arsenal. That's where I keep my favorite card.
And I think that night
especially in that matchup.
Yeah, that was a rough one. And I think that night too, I got...
Oh, you did it like the game before too, right?
I did all 4 games.
Oh, all 4. Oh.
Yeah. I got really good at pitch stacking that one. The way you can just hide either the CNC or the pummel, and then it comes back later. Yeah, amazing. So yeah, I really like the way that it forced me to learn a new mechanic of the game that I never would have experienced otherwise.
And that's kind of surprising too. There's a couple heroes, I would include like Kano in that umbrella too,
For sure.
that like really reward you for exploring that element of the game that's always been there. Anyone can pitch stack, but no one really has to. But then you
Right.
get to play Oldhim and Kano, and it's like you pitch stack, and that's how you win.
Right, especially because a lot of the popular decks right now, they're pitch 1 blue card and then you play like 5 others. So it's like you don't really have to worry about that. And if you do, you're probably losing, if you're playing your blues at least. I really like the card filtering aspect as well from Oldhim. It's one of the main reasons why I didn't go with Bravo originally. Being able to draw cards in any card game is very powerful. So being able
Heck yeah.
and playing a hero originally that didn't draw any cards unless I got really lucky, going from that to Oldhim with Crown of Seeds being able to like shuffle, like Arsenal, just whatever, like you don't need to be smart about it and just getting bailed out for free essentially, and then you're turning that into advantage. It was just a lot of fun in it, and something that you don't get out of every hero, and that's why he was at the top of the meta for so long. And then also harping on that, I just liked being efficient with my resources. Like I never really had to pitch for anything more than like 1 or 2. So being able to pitch for, Crown of Siege, Rampart, and then your hero ability or a staunch response or something. And then being able to come back with a hammer swing and still Arsenal. All of that was like very new to me. I'm like, wow, I have so many options. Like it was like overwhelming at first, but once you like get the good fundamentals of the hero, like you really just felt unstoppable. I come from a warrior play style, so like I have really good block values as a whole and a good bit of armor, but none of it is like recurring. Whereas Guardian has still really good armor suite, but you're able to get consistent value over the course of the game with Rampart and Crown of Seeds. Just being able to like do that every single turn and still leave cards to be on the offense or add more to defense, like with Oasis or Spite or Staunch Response, was something that I hadn't played with before. So it was, definitely overwhelming to have all these different resources at my disposal.
Yeah, playing against you as well as a couple of other Oldhims, I definitely didn't like being on the other side of that. It felt like every single turn, it was, I'm going to pitch a blue, activate Crown, throw Rampart in front of your first attack. And it was that pretty much for any hero. Like that was good against any hero, just about. Like obviously not Kano, but it's good against just most heroes. It was good in most situations. It really just felt like most of the time that's what you were doing at the start of every turn. And for me, like it's powerful, right? When we talked about our control episode, it was that offensive power through pitching is very, very important to playing a good control play style. But if it's the exact same thing every single time, it definitely felt almost more toxic than healthy.
Yeah, and playing against Oldhim before I switched over, I noticed that like anything under 5 was not going through, especially if you don't go especially wide, because at first, like you Crown of Seeds and Rampart, you have one floating left over, and then you draw a card off of Crown of Seeds as well. So you can just throw that whatever card you drew in front of their first attack, and you block 5, not to mention your hero ability can bump it up to 7. It's really impressive, especially if you're heavy on individual arcane damage where I can just like pitch a bunch of blues to it, still block your physical. Like I definitely didn't feel that pressure against Viscerai in some matchups. Like you have to really play perfectly and spend a lot of the game setting up to leak as much as possible against Oldhim, because if you were trying to do the most amount of damage per turn, you might leak some, but overall, if your power cards are spread apart, it's really hard to break through this hero.
Yeah, I think the best turn I ever had against you was when I played 2 Revels back to back.
God, yeah.
And you just got stuck with 2 reds in hand. And I was like, oh, thank God he got stuck with 2 reds in hand before I threw Revel at him.
Yeah.
Because before that, it was just, I felt like there's no way I'm getting through unless I'm chaining together 2 of these giant power cards.
Yeah, and that kind of boils into my next point. Like, really, unless it's like divine intervention, like I really never felt like I was too much on the back foot or that I was getting blown out by somebody. I always felt like I had options because of my card filtering. Like CNC just had like no text against me really for a lot of the time.
Yeah, I side them out against Oldhim, which is crazy.
For sure.
Literally like one of the only matchups. You think defense reactions, Oldhim can't play defense reactions. This is great. You'll side in the CNC, but like he can just take out the arsenal, so it ends up not doing much.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I really liked Crown of Providence when it first came out, because it just negates the first CNC.
Yeah.
But if I can do that every turn, there's no incentive to run this card unless
Yeah.
you're trying to pummel it too, you know?
I like that thought of never being on the back foot. If you have the tempo and you're actually able to like keep a 5-card hand with some of these big guardian attacks, you're definitely where you want to be.
For sure.
But if they have the tempo and you're just spending all your energy blocking, oh, that's also where I want to be. Like
Yeah.
both are fine.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've seen this against Lexi specifically. Like they just have no arrows or one really bad arrow, and they have to like just take an off turn, set it for the next one, hopefully blow you out with a 6-card hand. It's turns like that where I'm like, okay, now I can, like, God forbid I have, like you said, a Spinal Crush, CNC, or Endless Winter or something. Like, if you leave me with a 5-card hand, more often than not, I can really punish you with it. And also, at any point in the game, I can kind of gauge, like, okay, I've seen some of your power cards, you still have some left. Maybe I can fatigue you now because you can't stack a bunch of them to try and leak all this damage into me. Once you know, like, the ratios of certain decks or strategies, it gets really easy to threaten fatigue at certain points in the game. And that's what I really enjoyed, because I've never fatigued anybody before, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a really cool element of Oldhim, of like, oh, you need to know every other hero. I think when you're playing Fi, you don't always need to feel that way. You can just kind of Ardivore, throw 30 damage, and feel good about yourself. And if you can do that in a hand, you just kind of take whatever you need to. But with Oldhim, you really needed to be thinking, okay, where are we at?
Yeah.
How many cards have we gone through? What's the difference in our 2 deck sizes?
Yeah.
What's already in the graveyard? What's been banished?
It's skill testing.
For sure. And you something you said resonated with me, like the deck size. I felt in a lot of matchups, like my life total did not matter at all. Like it was more so, do I have enough like blue earths, blue ices, or just enough defense fractals left, or just generically more cards than you? Because if I do, then a lot of my stuff can just go straight to blocking. I don't have to be as stringent with, you know, what I'm using to attack or defend with. So that was another thing that I liked about Oldhim. So what Oldhim didn't do, and I feel like this is most significant because I played him right as he was leaving the scene. He didn't really use a lot of elemental cards as much as the guardian cards towards the end of his like term or whatever. Really, the only cards that I had left in my deck were Channel Lake Friendship, or Channel Lake Frigid.
Channel Lake Friendship Ender.
Yeah, that's a more accurate name for it. So Channel Lake Frigid. No one laughed at that, by the way. Whenever I play it, I go Channel Lake Friendship, and they would just be deadpan. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess it's not time for jokes.
because that what's happening on the other side of the table is that
Is you play Channel Lake Bridge
and we all look at our hands and go, just add 1 to every single card in the upper right. Just add 1 everywhere. And we just go, well, this hand's Garbage.
Guess we're blocking now.
I guess we're blocking. Oh, you threw a Titan's fist at me? Thanks.
I did think it was very funny.
Thank you.
I only heard it in context where it wasn't appropriate to laugh, you
Yeah.
know? Like if I'm watching someone else's game, you know?
Yeah, true.
I'm not gonna be like, ha, you got hit by the shadow like friendship. Isn't it cool? Isn't that fun?
Isn't that such a great card?
Yeah. Oh man, that's hilarious. So yeah, I really only had Channel like Frigid, the Blue Earths, and I think Endless Witcher, which is his specialization for specific matchups. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt like that was lacking. Like I felt like I wish I had played him earlier because I like the fusing mechanic. That wasn't really prevalent in Briar, and I don't feel like playing Lexi. So this was like my last chance to play a hero that I like that with that fuse mechanic. And his hero ability felt more tuned to the control aspect of the hero and not so much dealing with the fusing aspect like I mentioned. I really like the fuse mechanic and I wish he had more of it. It just gives more flavor to the hero in general, being able to use these interesting fuse cards. Next, I think I'd really like to hear from Fuzzy about what Oldhim represented in the game and what it will take to replace him or what it'll look like when he's gone.
Yeah, for Yellow Pitch today, I was thinking about really Oldhim as an opponent. I don't have a whole lot of experience playing Oldhim, but I feel like he has a very specific and valuable spot in the game as a whole. Like, think about it, right? Like, what does the game lose by Oldhim rotating out? And what would I want to see in a replacement? Because I don't think anybody would disagree that the game is going to be really different without Oldhim in it, right? Mm-hmm. I do want to put a little bit of a caveat on this podcast. I'm not trying to make this the super serious, competitive, playtesting, like grindy, sweaty podcast.
We're not those people.
Yeah.
If it becomes that, great game, guys. Shake hands. So long. I'm not someone who does that.
Hey, when we win Nats, it might be that way. Sorry, Clark.
I can put up with an episode. I can deal with your inflated heads for an episode.
Inflated heads.
But I think it's worth mentioning at least a little bit of the competitive experience in order to set the scene a little bit for talking about what heroes are present in the game and what they bring to the table and what you can expect from them, right? So we might imply the presence of a competitive scene, but I want you guys to be thinking about how the game as a whole is changed, even at an armory level, right? Like when you're planning your deck, you always plan your deck against what the opponent has, right? There's a reason we have a sideboard, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe for like your first draft, you're just like, what is my game plan? You're trying to figure out your game plan. But there are decks out there that are trying to figure out your game plan too. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to have a plan B. Oldhim requires you to have a plan B. Are there any other heroes that do that?
Not any that don't exist in the game anymore.
Dromai?
Yeah, Dromai for sure.
Yeah, Dromai requires you to have poppers for sure.
Yeah.
And like you have to be able to play around the dragons more so than just the single life total. I would definitely agree with Dromai. I'd also probably put like Arachne Azuri on that list too. Like when you're going up against
Azuri, definitely. Mm-hmm. I'd say maybe Arachne a little bit less so, but also just I don't think Arachne's really being played. I feel like his play rate's really low. We had someone at our armory who was kind of championing him.
Mm-hmm. And he played a very defensive list that focused on trying to basically fatigue you slowly by playing some nice on-right forecast things that guarantee that you lose a card with him as he plays it, right? Mm-hmm. Like these grindy decks where you can't just throw damage. If you just throw damage, you probably won't be able to win, right? You won't have enough to get past his slew of defense reactions, etc. So I don't think Oldhim is the only one. I do think he's the most prominent one.
For sure.
Right?
And he was the best at it.
Yes. At forcing you to have a plan B, forcing you to think ahead, forcing you to think of the long game, because he's going to be able to stop you from playing in the short term, either with those little disruptions or just by full-on blocking out, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's really valuable to have in a game. Like, that is depth.
Yeah, it's definitely worth mentioning Oldhim and his impact on the competitive scene because he is a powerful hero, and like dismissing that is, kind of an L. And also, like you mentioned, at an armory level, you're going to be playing against other people who are on their grind for the next competitive event, or just wanting to play powerful decks in general, or they just like a specific hero and it happens to be the best deck in the format right now. So you have to, get a really good understanding for the meta in general.
And this game is designed to be one-on-one. One thing that makes Oldhim unique is his ability to consistently fatigue. We've been talking about this a little bit already, but I think fatigue is a very different game plan than the rest of it, right? It's literally just living, literally just not taking damage. And then at the end of the game, your cards, like he swings with a hammer that swings for 4 damage. If my weapons, like my Kodachis, only swing for 2, I pitch to deal 2, you pitch to deal 4. Like if all of us only have 1 card left, you're going to kill me twice as fast, right? His blues are really consistent, so he's able to like actually play good cards at the end game where you're not able to. So him getting to that end game, his plan will probably be better unless you specifically like stack your deck like with pitching in order to make up for it, or have other plans. Like I played Briar, I had a couple like recursion pieces that I would do. My plan against Oldhim was basically if I can recur Channelment Heroic an extra time or 2 and play it 4 times throughout the game instead of just 3, then I'm probably in a pretty good spot, right?
Yeah.
Like that was my plan, is I can go over if he lets me live long enough to cast my key card more than just 3 times. I run just enough recursion for that. There was some other loops that like Briars were running to fight recursion. I want to shout out Dash for this too, because Dash had her pistol package. With those induction chambers and plasma purifiers, she could fire off a whole bunch of damage, like 12 damage, without actually losing a card from her deck. She's just pitching a bunch for those steam counters and her pistol shots.
Yeah. I loved that dash. I got to play pistol dash against an Oldhim once, as well as against that defensive Arachne deck. I loved it. I loved being able to play that.
And the fact that Dash runs that, at least on a more competitive level, I'm sure you can build that deck regardless of who's in the meta exactly, but it's something that works well against Oldhim. That's not necessarily the best plan in most matchups. And we're going to have less reason to see really cool decks like that with Oldhim rotating out.
Right. And I think Dash and Briar were very interesting examples because they have something already in their kit to go long, like Briar with Earth and inherent recursion elements in Earth itself. And Dash with that pistol package just being like, I think it's maybe like 6 slots in total, or like 12 slots maybe for the sideboard, and then the rest is your more aggressive package. But for heroes who don't have that, really the only way you can defeat an Oldhim that goes into the fatigue game plan is just pitching all of your good stuff. So you might be using your blues early on, or your yellows early on to pitch those reds alongside blues, so that when they're running out of defense reactions, because you still have on hits with your yellows and blues, it's just not as powerful, and they have to answer it no matter what. So towards the end of the game, if you have more reds than maybe they thought you did, or they didn't pitch according to what you were pitching, then you can catch them off guard and leak way more than you're supposed to normally in that state of the game.
Exactly. So you have these aggro heroes who can't quite go their plan A of just like vomit their hand every hand and just try to get as much value on an individual moment basis, but they can switch to more setup. They can pitch stack, they can make a point of intentionally waiting to get cards together and then going all out at those times to get over Oldham's defenses. It's that shift of like, okay, I have to think about my turns. I have to do big brain mode. And Oldhim brings out the best in other heroes by force. You have to be playing at your best in order to fight against Oldhim. You have to do your flashiest, coolest, sexiest plays in order to get around his defense. That's why when you go online and you see like discussions about matchup, you'll be on like the Briar Discord, and they'll be like, does Briar have a good matchup against Oldhim? And they'll say, well, it depends on who's better. It's all the skill.
Seriously.
And isn't that kind of what the game should be about too? Like matchups are cool. It's good. There are going to be inherent advantages that certain heroes bring to certain matchups, but you would kind of hope that in a game you want the better player to win, right? The player with more skill when it comes down to it. And I feel like Oldhim matchups are that skill testing, like essence of the game on a more ideal platonic level, you know? And I mean, like Oldhim is still strong, you know?
Yeah.
Like I kind of wish he wasn't the really strong, oppressive hero that you can like rely on him to be in the top 8, you know? But that also might just be a matter of the best players are picking Oldhim, and that's why Oldhim gets to top 8.
Yeah.
That's where the best players are.
And I've said it countless times before, but I still hold true that the testament to a good aggro player is how well you play into whatever control deck is at the top. So if you like really suffer against Oldhim, I promise it's you. Especially if you take the time to play Oldhim and understand what he's doing, the core of his cards, and like what threat density he has at any given time, then you will do better against Oldhim just as a whole.
The one thing I want to bring up about Oldhim that I won't miss is the going to time. When you go to a tournament, they give you 55 minutes for your round. 5 minutes is technically for like sideboarding and like shaking hands and rolling dice and shuffling. And the other 50 minutes is for actually playing the game. It's more loose than that. But you know, Oldhim is the only hero that actually uses all 55 of those minutes. You know, when we go to the end of the round and people are still playing, it's a table with Oldhim at it.
Always.
How different do you think it would be if Oldhim wasn't in the game, right? Do you think that like, because there'll be like these big 7-round events, right? These big events, and those are going to take like 7 hours. Do you think we could cut that down to like 5 hours, Joel? Do you think like 7 rounds without Oldhim would only take 5-6 hours?
See, I get that going to time sucks. And I will say it's usually the aggro player who takes forever. Like me, my turns are easy. Arsenal pass, go baby.
Well, that's
like,
what I'm talking about. It's the game as a whole with
sure.
Oldhim in it. I'm not saying that like Oldhim players take long.
Yeah.
I'm saying Oldhim makes people take longer.
For sure. But it also, I feel like if there's not a hero that does that, usually the aggro decks are running rampant and just blowing out everybody else. And
I don't know if I want that either. You're right.
I really don't. There was like, Stubby's Fi, like abysmal matchup. So I'm happy with a control deck showing up here and there.
So that's why we don't get lunch breaks during rounds?
Yeah, I don't get lunch breaks. You do. You play Briar. You blow somebody out with Force of Nature, Channel My Heroic. I'm getting to know somebody for 55 minutes the whole time.
You watch them go through a whole emotional journey.
Oh, for sure.
They show up all excited. They're shuffling their deck. They
You say,
meet you.
hi, I'm Oldhim.
5 stages of grief. Yeah. No, seriously. Like, they're like, oh, I've never played Oldhim. I'm like, oh my word.
So just imagine if we got a lunch break after round 3 and everyone's well fed. Okay, here's my tinfoil hat theory. I think everyone would play better if they had lunch. I think the quality of games in Flesh and Blood, the quality of play will go up. Everybody will be more happy with the way they both played. And then you get to see those games and they're like extra intense. I don't know.
I like, because I can go pretty long without eating. And if they
Well, I
can't,
can too.
right. So we should just weed out the weaklings and I'll get my easy win and go on with my day.
And I don't know how we could fix. Like, I want a fatigue hero in the game.
For
I
sure.
just don't want them to go to time. Are those things like? Do they have to exist together? Maybe they do.
I would love to live in a world where they can be mutually exclusive. Because I like fatigue. I like being able to run out somebody of resources, of threat density. But going to time is just, it's brutal for everybody involved. And it's always awkward. Like, do we draw? Do I give it to you? Do you give it to me? You know, it's just a situation we should. Because I think they actually changed the way concession works too because of this.
Because of Oldhim.
Because of Oldhim, like, do you realistically have enough threat density to kill me? It's impossible to say. We have like at least 15 minutes of game left, but we're at time.
Yeah.
Who can say? You know, so it's rough for sure.
I'd really be interested in with the replacement for Oldhim that eventually comes. I would be really hoping that, like, basically this is my summary for my section. I would love a new elemental guardian to have a late game plan that forces other players to react to it. You know, I want them to change their game plan to match, and I would want the games to go a little bit faster. If I could have that, I'd be like, LSS, you are gods.
Yep.
I think I'm going to hand my section over, the metaphorical microphone over to Clark for our blue pitch. And I'd like the viewer to know that they can go to the description for this episode, be it on their favorite podcast app or YouTube, and we'll have a link to a Google Drive where we have write-ups for all of these custom cards that we talk about during the episode, so you can get a visual for what we're talking about.
It's all standardized. I made the style guide for it. You can see
beautiful.
the style guide in that folder. Man, okay. So
Already.
when we heard that Oldhim was Living Legend out, and we talked about redesigning the space, we went through a couple different ideas of designing the episode. We reconceptualized a couple of times, and I ended up getting this section on replacing him. And I went through maybe 8 or 9 different designs for an Earth Ice hero. And I think it's because Tales of Aria has a really stagnant design space that I really don't like.
That's true. We basically saw it from the one set that was like, what, a year ago at least? And we haven't seen any updates to it really since then.
Not only that, but what they have given us doesn't have a lot of space in it. It's essentially you have an elemental class type card with fusion on it. And then you are looking to define those different elements. So for Oldhim, it's Earth, Ice, Guardian. Earth has some arsenal synergy, some card filtering, it has some recursion, it has embodiment of Earth tokens, which we didn't see in Oldhim. And so I started designing some cards with embodiment of Earth. They were all boring. They're good. Like, they were perfectly fine. I think it's especially good in Oldhim because embodiment of Earth tokens turn your non-attack 3 blocks into non-attack 4 blocks. And we know how powerful... We know how powerful 4 blocks can be in this game.
Definitely.
So I was like, wait, this is powerful. It's good. It's interesting. No, wait, no, it's not. It's not interesting at all. This is boring. I looked at Ice. Ice is all about short-term disruption to give yourself space for like your 3-card hands. That's the idea behind it. I give you a Frostbite token or I make you put the card on top of your deck. I make you discard or have some tax effect to mess with your turn. You know, maybe that just ends up with you not playing all the cards in your hand, so you get to arsenal one of them. And then I get to come at you with a 3-card hand. Maybe that's my CNC turn, and I have finals for a pummel or something. That's the intention behind it. But, like, we've already kind of seen the Ice design space really get rounded out. I've just mentioned lots of different tax effects. What am I adding that's new to the game? Or am I just recycling old concepts? And then if I add something new to this Ice idea, I feel like I'm just... putting too much attention into Ice, giving Ice too many controlling methods, and then that doesn't get spread out to other heroes, other classes, other types.
Yeah, we want new ideas with our new Oldhim.
Exactly. And Guardian is just expensive attacks, finishers. It has disruption too. There's a lot of defensive options. And all of this, I feel like I've seen so much of it already. That Oldhim encapsulated the concept so well with what Aria gave us, that I just didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
So I instead focused on one of the things that Fuzzy said. Fuzzy said, I want to win in the late game without going to time. What does that look like? Well, that looks like winning in the second rotation. And so my first thought was constructing the perfect hand. We already have the perfect card that does that. It was an Oldhim card. Does anyone know what it is?
You said it's filtering?
No. This is the card where you want the perfect hand, aka you pitch stacked these 4 cards together so that when you draw them all in one hand, you have the perfect hand.
Oh, I think I know. Oakenold.
Yeah.
Oakenold.
Earth Ice Fusions, 3 cost. Have a blue, have an Earth card, have an Ice card. That is the perfect hand for Oldhim. We already got the card for it. It's also not a specialization, so it gets to stay with whatever new hero comes out to replace the slot.
Oh.
It's not a specialization.
I forgot about that.
So I looked at, Fusion Matters and this idea of like setting up fusion hands in your second rotation. Things like Polar Blast, So Tomorrow, Burgeoning, and Evergreen are all things that care about being in your arsenal, which is very nice for Fusion because the whole play pattern behind Fusion, as I learned putting together a Ice Lexi deck, is you want to be playing the card that doesn't have Go Again typically, and then fusing it with a card in hand, then that card goes to Arsenal.
Right.
So you really like having your elemental cards in Arsenal. Was playing around with that space and went, oh wait, I'm just designing Lexi again. Again, like
so true.
It's such a stagnant design. It was stifling me. And so I kept trying to break out. I was looking at interesting ideas like Oldhim Ice React and putting that on different cards, that taking a card in your opponent's hand and putting it on top of their deck. I was looking at symmetric card draw effects where you got to create these embodiments of Earth or Frostbites, sort of using this rounds on me where Oldhim actually plays like a, he's big in that card art. He's a big part of the story of that specific card.
Right.
I was looking at all these different ideas, but I landed on one that isn't exactly Earth Ice, but I think is very much in line with this fatigue going long strategy. I'm calling it Epical. And what it says is that when you banish 2 other cards with the same name and pitch value as the cards you are playing from your graveyard, it gets some benefit.
Wait, are you saying epic but epical or?
No. So this is Epochal.
Oh.
Epical.
Like epoch, epical.
Yeah. So the epoch is like a very specific time. And that's because I created a very interesting concept for this hero. I looked into the lore. This is the first time we're bringing up Flesh and Blood lore on the podcast. And I was looking at, okay, what is Isenloft? Where is Oldhim from? What is this region about?
This is good because I don't know either.
So in the Isen mountain range, there is an ancient city where the Guardians once dwelt. They lived in this one bastion that protected the realm of Aria from the hordes of invading evil creatures from the void, right? Oldhim was a part of this very old group of Guardians who were tasked with defending Aria from those forces until they all got frozen in ice and then eventually forgotten about until Oldhim got thawed out through some magical way and he started roaming and being a hero. So I have the idea of, okay, Oldhim's kind of on his own, kind of on his lonesome. He's the only one traveling around. Certainly he's inspiring people.
Oh.
So my hero is Esmond, Summit Seeker, Earth Ice Elemental Guardian. He is all about climbing up the mountain, ascending up to Isenloft, going to that old ancient place and starting the order back up again.
Wow.
We love a, what is it, coming of age story?
Coming of age story, yeah. Just growth, learning. I was very inspired by some of the stories that were told in Legends of Runeterra around Targon. Through multiple cards, they tell the story of this one specific climber who goes from just being, you know, some young baby face at the base of the mountain till at the top where he is like communing with the gods.
Right.
I sort of had that idea in mind of this person climbing up the mountain, gaining this experience. In terms of the epical keyword, the idea is that he has learned the cards through blocking or playing them when they're in the graveyard. And so when he plays that third one, he has learned from his other two experiences. So they get some benefit.
That's cool.
That is okay. So you're saying, like, if I have two Terra Sunders, then the third one would do something that the other two didn't? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but this would be a keyword on cards.
Oh,
it
I
wouldn't be granted to cards without the keyword.
Oh, I see.
It would be a new mechanic that the hero would be built around.
But it rewards you for having or getting through your deck quicker, having things in the graveyard, and
it rewards you for pitching them.
Oh,
and only pitching one of them, one or two of them, right? You don't want to keep the card. No, you want to play the cards. You want to block with the cards. You want them to end up in your graveyard so that when that third one comes around, you can play it and get some effect for it.
I like that because it is late game, but it's not quite fatigue. You're rewarded for having cards in your graveyard instead of your deck, but you still get this really nice late game benefit. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So in terms of what is printed on his hero card, the idea was each time you successfully fuse an Elemental Guardian card, create an Ascent token. Now for the Ascent token, I was imagining these as token that like tell the story of his ascent as he climbs up the mountain, as he grows and learns. Maybe like one of them is him almost slipping off a cliff or something like that.
a series of cards of his journey on different Ascent tokens.
Yeah, just different arts.
That'd be really cute, like a whole bunch of little different arts.
Yeah,
I
and
love
then
that.
once you get to the fifth one, there'll be 5 of them. Once you get to the fifth one, you can, as an attack or a defense reaction, spend all 5 to sync a card. You can take a card from your hand or arsenal, put it onto the bottom of your deck, draw a card.
Oh.
Card filtering, and getting to that second cycle quicker. That was sort of the whole idea that I was playing on. Get to that second cycle faster. Get to those perfect hands faster.
Find something irrelevant, draw to the cool stuff that you want.
Yeah, or even just, hey, big attack is coming in. I need a defense reaction. Or even just like, oh, this Kano's popping off and I'm stuck with a red in hand. I can blow these 5 tokens to go find it.
And I will say, I do love new tokens. I like when they create new tokens for different things. So just that itself makes me really excited for it.
I do think your idea is really cute. I feel like people are just going to take one of the tokens and put a die on it. But
Oh, yes.
That seems so
but then
disrespectful.
everyone will have their favorite art, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe there's like one art that has like a kitty cat in the background. People are like, oh, yep, I'm playing the kitty cat ascent.
Yeah.
There can be different like arguments within the Esmond community of like who's which ascent token is the best.
Yeah. For a signature weapon, I was looking for it to sort of be an echo of Winter's Wail while not being broken like Winter's Wail.
R.I.P.
So this one is called Lore Lost Hammer. The idea is, this is just some hammer that he found while climbing, but it's actually this old ancient weapon of
That's
Olin's
so
Guardians.
cool.
Right? Like he didn't realize what it was when he picked it up.
Yeah.
But it is this ancient, powerful thing.
Man, if this isn't a card, make it a movie. This sounds dope.
So once per turn action, pay 3 to attack with it, 4 power, just like Winter's Wail. But now it says if an Elemental Guardian card is pitched this way, it gains, if this hits a hero, create an Ascent token under your hero's control. So it helps you get to those Ascent tokens a little bit faster. Maybe it lets you do something without having to fuse in those like really defensive games. I also want to point out that fuse ability, the reason why I have it is to reward the Oldhim actually playing cards instead of just pitching every single goddamn turn. Like every single turn you're just pitching is really annoying to play against. Here you are actually rewarded for playing and fusing your cards. Playing cards, holding cards in hand, like there is value in it. Also note, you cannot fuse with a card that you can then pitch to activate your Lore Lost Hammer. Because all of your fusion is Earth or Ice cards.
And you have to pitch
interesting.
Elemental Guardian cards to get the hammer turned
Yep.
on.
I like this incentive a lot to make people play with the Elemental Guardian cards. Because like I said, that is what I felt was missing with Oldhim. I love fusing with Endless Winter, Mulch, whatever. So seeing more of this in a hero, I think, I'm all aboard.
It was also an idea of mine that Oakenold would create 2 because you technically Earth fused and Ice fused it.
Oh,
so you would get 2
ooh.
Ascent tokens to reward playing into the double fuse. Maybe they would print some more double fuse cards to reward this strategy.
Yeah, so maybe the hero ability would read for each card revealed to a fuse effect. You get a Ascent token. Right?
Yeah.
Just to make it a little bit more clear, but I like that idea.
The final card that I want to talk about with this design that I've put together is called Ison's Ascent. This is his legendary specialization. Elemental Guardian non-attack action. I have it costing 4 right now.
Okay.
It would be a blue because Guardian. And there's only one of these.
Checks out.
And the idea behind this card is once again sort of playing into that idea of growing and learning over the course of a game. So with Ison's Ascent, it would essentially have 3 phases. The first time you play the card, it has an underrate effect. And at the end of playing it, you put it on the bottom of your deck.
Okay.
The second time you play it, it's an overrated effect. You get rewarded for going through your entire deck and having a turn where you can still block and play something that costs 4. Costing 4 means you're either spending a blue and a Findall's trigger, or you're spending 2 cards and playing it. 3-card hand, right? Again, sort of putting a little bit more of like, you need to be putting together nice cards to be able to do this stuff.
Right.
And then the third time you play it, I want a game-winning effect, and then it banishes.
So does this card have like go again, or like does it? You said it goes to the bottom on the first cast. So the second cast, where does it go?
Graveyard.
Oh.
So you have to use recursion to get it back into your deck for the third cast.
Yes.
Ooh, okay. So I like that already because a lot of the Earth cards like care about recursion. So maybe you're playing into that pretty heavily.
That's
And
the
you
idea.
have to recur pretty late too.
Yeah.
Because recursion early is almost easier, but you have to go through both cycles, and then like you're also having to pitch recursion pieces to go there after you play this the second time.
No, you can still play this 2 times and still feel good. Again, the second time you play it, I want it to be a nice overrate effect.
I guess what I'm saying is like you play it once and you can't remembrance right away. Like you have
Yeah.
to like pitch it and then play it again and then recur it again, you know?
Now, there could be some spicy things about, remembrancing it when you have like 10 cards in your deck.
Ooh, yeah.
And then, maybe you shuffle it into that first hand that you draw.
Or like forgoing your pitch stack, like remembrance something else just to shuffle it so you get to the second cast faster.
Sure. And I think that, okay, that's a little of RNG. Maybe it breaks the idea of the hero a little bit. But if they're being forced to run Remembrance to make that happen, and then there is some RNG included as well, I think that's at least a little healthy.
Yeah, because Guardian itself is a very consistent, very, very good math inherent in the design. So giving it more ways to be more consistent and get these, really good, efficient uses of their mana, really efficient uses of their resources is pretty dangerous as a whole. We've already seen 2 Guardians rise to the top of a competitive landscape. So the fact that this kind of makes you play towards the RNG, I think, you want to... It's part of the journey, too. Like, not everything is guaranteed. So it's very emblematic of that, too.
Yeah.
I love some of these ideas, Clark. So, Joel, I'm curious, as someone who's played a little bit of Elemental Guardian, what kind of a payoff would you give a card that's like, has an underrate effect the first time, but you're hoping to just cycle it back again, and every time you play it, you get a better and better effect? Like, what do you think what kind of effect would you expect there?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I didn't... Like I said, I went through so many different iterations that like I just couldn't get around to writing the text.
You did such a good job, Clark. I'm in love.
Yeah, for this hero, I think for the first effect, like maybe it's like, I don't know, get an embodiment of Earth because that's boring, right? Or you gain like 3 life or something.
Maybe 2 embodiments, because the way at least it's costed right now, it costs 4 resources to play, and it doesn't have go again.
Yeah,
I think like you could get like 2 embodiments, and it would still be fair.
Yeah.
You get to have a really defensive turn, assuming you draw a bunch of non-attacks. You might not even draw non-attacks. Like you might want something else.
Sure. Or maybe it's an entirely different token in general, like just something that buffs your block value. Like there's a card called Stonewall Confidence that buffs your attack
Guardian.
actions.
I think it's specifically Guardian attack action cards.
Yeah, exactly. And so maybe that's a way you can reward yourself, like just the next turn you're blocking more.
I think this would be really cool as an aura that repeats itself.
Oh, yeah.
The first time you play it, it's like the Guardian auras stay around for 1 turn and then they pop and go to graveyard. So maybe this one does something like that. It stays around for 1 turn, buffs your next attack by something small because it's the first time out. He's still learning how to like buff himself up. And then like the cycle comes around and he's able to have, it's a big boost, right?
Yeah, so maybe the first time you cast it, it's an aura and you either like gain, I don't know, 3 or 4 life, or you make your next turn like really defensive. And then the second time, okay, so now it goes to the bottom, you've seen it once again. So what's a good effect? Like maybe...
I mean, I very much wanted to emphasize with this hero...
Sorry, I got a really good idea, but I want you to finish that thought.
I really wanted to emphasize more of the idea of learning and strength and like endurance more so than like running to those earth and ice roots. Because again, I just feel like those ideas are so played out and simple. They're the easy answers, but as a designer... I don't like the easy answers. I like digging a little bit deeper. I know what I want the game-winning effect to be.
Okay.
Increase intellect. Like either a permanent increase or a temporary, very large. Like for 1 turn, you have 8 intellect.
I actually have a adjacent idea, but I want to hear yours, Fuzzy.
That was better than what I was about to say. But I was thinking like at least for the second time around, you could have it be like draw 2 cards. Like again with this aura idea, like this aura when it pops the second time you played it at the start of your turn, you get to draw 2 cards. Especially because we were pitch stacking to get here, right?
Right.
Like hopefully this is the second time we drew it. Hopefully we just pitch stack to get it and we know what the next 2 cards are going to be and it rewards that planning.
I was just going to suggest draw 2 cards as the second effect. That's crazy.
Yo.
Is draw 2 cards for 4 mana on rate? With no other effect?
Considering that it's not draw 2 cards now, it's draw 2 cards on your next turn, it might be on rate.
So actually, I think it should include the first effect too. So you'd gain 4 life, buff up your next turn, and draw 2 cards. And then, so this card goes to grave after that, and you have to recur it. So I want to hear your idea, Clark, but I think what would really be emblematic of Oldhim and Guardian in general, and utilizing the insane hammer that you found, like you thought it was like a cool hammer, but it's this really ancient relic. I think it should be like a Towering Titan type card where you buff your next attack by an insane amount and dominate it, so that you basically gain 4 life, you buff your next defense or your next block, you draw 2 cards, and then you give like +10 to your hammer attack and give it dominated or something.
Oh, that's very interesting. I don't dislike that. I mean, like, it's very Guardian. I think I was just sort of trying to shy away from a lot of the like commonly tread spaces. I do think plus intellect is nice. I've mentioned more than once here the idea of learning and growing.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely
So
like that
intellect
idea.
increasing. Maybe give it an on hit. So maybe instead of +10, it's like +6 with an on hit of increasing the intellect for 1 permanently for the rest of the game.
Oh, that's insane. Yeah.
I think that'd be very interesting. I think that would also just be a good epical that's like, as an on hit, give +1 intellect for the next turn. But definitely playing around with intellect. Maybe that's too strong on Guardian, but I like the idea a lot. I kind of want to wrap up this section by sort of bringing up another reason of why I like this hero idea so much, even though you're not really seeing the earth and the ice in the design of it very much. LSS is really lagging behind Magic the Gathering in one primary way with their card game. And I think it's storytelling in their cards.
Oh.
They are starting to do big moment cards. We saw Regicide back in Dynasty. We just saw Spoiled in Dusk Till Dawn. We just saw Morlock Hill.
Yeah, that was sick.
Those are great cards. Love those cards. They're not always the most competitively powerful cards. They don't need to be. But I want to see more storytelling in their cards. I want not just story moments, storytelling.
Right.
And I think that this hero lends himself so much to storytelling
For sure.
that is what I want to see the most.
I think I agree with you, and I love the flavor that this hero represents. I think the thing that makes it so different from the other heroes is that the other ones kind of represent someone that you can come across, right? Like Kasai is, you're fighting Kasai, but this Esmond Summit Seeker, like, it kind of feels like during the battle you are climbing the mountain instead of during the battle you are fighting the other hero that you are fighting against, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit of why I wouldn't see this printed exactly how LSS does it. I love it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't quite fit like exactly the flavor that LSS seems to be trying to like strike when a game itself is playing out, you know?
Yeah, and I think you're kind of talking about how most heroes, when they're old, they're already established, whereas this hero is very much the journey, which I personally love. I love that there's so much storytelling with this hero itself. I don't think it speaks so much to the world of Fab, but I don't think it has to either. I think it's just a really good design overall.
Yeah. I mean, I also just want to put out there, you know, with the Targon, if any of you know Runeterra lore, at the top of Targon, they end up becoming the avatar for a god, where they transform
That's kind of cool.
into the champion. Like, that's what happens to everyone once they get to Targon's peak.
Esmond redeemed? Question?
Well, maybe I was inspired by seeing that particular spoiler the other day of a legendary card that can transform the hero. But no, I would not be so brazen as to design a card for that for my little pet project.
Well, I love what you got, Clark. Maybe someday we can even like go back and flesh out some of our designs. I would love to see this like expanded on.
Yeah, for sure.
Design some cards for Epical.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And I think the best way to say goodbye to Oldhim is to move to Arsenal, our last card, before he gets banned tomorrow.
Yes.
All right, guys, it's time for our Arsenal Zone. Our Arsenal Zone is where we shout out a card that we've been thinking about lately, maybe on our minds, maybe a favorite, maybe one that we hate or love to hate. I'm going to start things off by letting Joel go first.
Sounds good. So, I don't play Dash like at all. So I'm really glad that I don't play a lot of heroes with like fragile equipment, because that would piss me off. And that's because the card I want to talk about is T-Bone. Mainly, yeah, I see your face. Mainly because whenever I see T-Bone, I can't stop myself from in my mind going T-Bone. It's just like, I don't know why. I don't know. I'm just quirky that way, I guess. But anyways, I don't know like what the ratios are for T-Bones, but I think if you're running anything less than 9, I think you're throwing. I just love the fact that I'm forcing you to block with all your precious armor. God forbid you have something with Blade Break or Temper.
Mm-hmm. The first T-Bone is really not a big deal.
Yeah.
Second T-Bone, depending on my build, I can handle it.
Yeah.
Third T-Bone in the same turn.
My tunic, no!
This is also why I love Snapdragon Scalers, because I can just be like, Lamau block for 0.
Cheap equipment are so good for that.
Yeah.
$100, $200 equipment dies to T-Bone.
Yeah, literally, Snapdragon Scaler is the real homie. So anyways, that's my shout out for the day. I love T-Bone as a card. I think Mechanologists like getting these like not necessarily on hits, but getting like these weird like decision points like that and Pulse Wave Harpoon, another annoying ass Mechanologist card. I just love the design. I don't know. So shout out to T-Bone.
Woo.
Clark.
I'm preparing.
God. All right, go.
You, sir, across the street. Yes, you look like you're in the market for a brand new attack reaction. Come over here, good sir. Did you know that for just 2 resources, you could play Pummel? Pummel! Wow. It's a wonderful new attack reaction. It gives your next action card a cost 2 or more, +4?
+4, you say?
+4! And not just +4, a relevant on hit. It makes your opponent discard a card. You want to punish all those pesky Oldhims for running defense reactions? What about Arachnes? Dromize? Screw those champions! Run Pummel! No, Pummel's great. Love Pummel. I'm like building Viscerai right now, trying to like stack rune chants. We're looking at Vincent with stacking rune chants. Just these high costs that I get to play for free. It's like, oh no, whatever am I going to do with these 2 cards in hand? Pummel.
And spoilers are always fun for that.
Yep.
You get to look at all these cards and you're like, okay, but how can I run Pummel?
Yeah, for real.
Oh man, especially in Vincent. Especially in Vincent.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, the cost reduction in Viscerai and Vincent, like, such a cool design
Line up
space.
with Pummel. Yeah.
They really do.
Line up with Lead the Charge. I've already talked about how much I love running that in my Viscerai. Yeah.
Why
Pummel's
is it
great.
that all the the greediest deck lists also are the ones that attempt to use run Pummel? Like Azuri can already do so many things, but I'm always like, but Pummel can also be one of those things.
It's that Shin meme of the like, I don't have room for Pummel, looks up at their blues, or do I?
For real. Oh man. Yeah, I've tried to run Pummel in my Bolton list too, because the Bolting Blade gets reduced by 4.
Hey.
Right? Could be pummeled. It doesn't work.
Anytime there's any attack over 2 that gets cost reduced, we're like, but Pummel?
Yeah, no, seriously. It's so addicting.
No, but Pummel?
And you don't get the same feeling with Razor Reflex.
No. You don't.
Freaking Pummel player sitting across from you with a card in hand and a card in arsenal. I see you have Pummel. I see you're threatening it.
But
they're
do
looking everywhere but the board state to try to trick you into thinking that there's nothing else that they're gonna play.
Yeah.
See, I just like telling the opponent that I could have Pummel. I'm just like, yeah, card in hand, or I'm like, no cards in hand, 2 floating, card in arsenal, could have Pummel.
That just leaves 1.
All right, so for my shout out today, it's been a while since we've recorded, right, guys? A lot has happened since then. I actually got a new puppy.
You did.
He's so cute, and we actually named him Dash because I'm so into this game I had to express it in pet names.
Dash is a great pet name.
Yeah, dogs are named Dash all the time.
He do be dashing.
Yeah, my dog is a male dog, which I think Dash is a great name for a male dog. The Dash in Flesh and Blood is female, but that's not a problem. We're not afraid of like breaking the gender binary or tweaking
Absolutely.
it.
Gender bender.
Not on this podcast.
So I wanted to give you guys I wanted to shout out a Dash card for today.
Oh.
And I'm honoring my tradition of signing 2 copies of my card to give to you guys.
Let's go.
My card is Overload Yellow. I picked this card because it has Dash right on the art.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a Dash card with Dash. So I'm going to unsleeve these so I can sign them. 1 for you. And one for you.
Thank you.
Cherish it forever.
I shall.
I can't wait to never run this.
So over.
And I picked yellow because like my dog is a brown Rhodesian Ridgeback, and yellow is kind of like brown. You know, kind of.
Yeah, a little.
That's true. I mean, mustard can be brown mustard.
Right.
That's in the
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Joel.
I could tell. I could see it on your face.
Isn't red closer to brown on the cover?
We don't talk about that. We got yellow.
My apologies.
Don't take your yellow freaking over.
I can't wait to get plus X, where X is the number of times you have boosted this combat.
Oh yeah, that's what the card does.
It's fine. They can see it on the YouTube video.
Yeah, it costs 2 and it gets plus X, where X is the number of card times you boosted, and it swings for 4 naturally and
and
blocks
it's
for
a
3.
3 block.
Like most of Dash's stuff.
Yeah,
aren't
but this one
items.
blocks for 3 too.
It does.
I don't know. I think it's so funny how I have to highlight the 3 block of any card. It's just so great.
Pitch It To Me podcast is hosted by Fuzzy Delp, Clark Moore, and Joel Recinos. Executive producer, Talon Stradley. Logistics coordinator, John Farkas. Music by Dylan Holtz. Logo by Han V. Sound mixing, Christopher Moore. And last but not least, you. Thank you for listening. Please give us a follow on your favorite social media platform at Pitch It To Me podcast. Stay tuned for some outtakes.
Dash is a great word in general because dashing refers to somebody being attractive, and then dash is also running, right? But there's 100 dashes that are locals always, and there seems to be more. Like, they just multiple. Like, you look away for too long, they multiply.
It's literally
it's
the
Han.
it's literally the hero that Han recruits people on.
Yeah,
It's easy and cheap.
So annoying.
Yeah.
He just dogs on all my
Han's
characters.
just so cute and personable that he just comes up to you with his little button nose and he's like, "Do you want to play Dash?"